What is up, everybody? Welcome into episode 38 of the Brahma Bullpen. We got a lively one here for you. We just came off that tremendous defensive slobber knocking of Michigan. Now we're going to preview our next game, the Arlington Renegades. Brahmas going to Arlington to take on the now 0-4 Renegades. But before we get going, let's start off our preview episode, as always, with the Brahma Bullpen's power ranking. This is the way I voted in the United Football Media Group's power ranking. You know, down here in the cow pasture, we get one little vote to see who's ranked top in our league and in these power rankings. Of course, Birmingham Stallions last week were a unanimous number one. This week, number one, there was a couple of other people that voted for the Battlehawks number one. I think it was 3 first place votes for the Battlehawks at number one. I personally kept Birmingham ranked number one, Battlehawks number two. I don't even think it's a question at this point. But the Brahmas at number 3, DC at 4, Panthers at 5. Panthers are barely at 5. I almost put the Roughnecks above them. But the Roughnecks finally got their first win. They look better with Mark Thompson. Arlington Renegades, 0-4, but I think they're actually better than the Memphis Showboats, who've won one game, and we'll kind of talk about that here in a little while. Go ahead and pop up the standings for the league. This is current standings, factoring all the tiebreakers. XFL division, Battlehawks 1, Brahmas 2. You can see the DC Defenders are now 2-2 since they took that L to Birmingham. That'll be pretty critical loss maybe going forward. We'll look at the schedule a little bit coming up. And then there's the Renegades 0-4. Down in the USFL section, Birmingham 4-0, clear-cut number 1. Look at Michigan Panthers at 2-2. Showboats 1-3. Houston Roughnecks 1-3. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say it. Birmingham is the best team in the league, but the XFL is definitely the superior conference with Battlehawks, Brahmas, and Defenders. I mean, to me, it's not really even debatable, right? This game coming up this week in Arlington is critical. If we look at the schedule, we just had 3 of 4 games at home, our one loss being at home to St. Louis. Now we're going to go on the road for 3 games. So for 3 weeks, we're going to leave the friendly confines of the Dome. Maybe all you San Antonio fans that are not coming to the games will start to wonder where the team's at. Who knows? But, of course, the TV ratings have been pretty good. But we go to Arlington. That's this weekend. And after that, we'll go to D.C. 2 weeks from now and then to Houston. I definitely think that the Arlington game and the Houston games are the 2 easiest of the 2 games. D.C., that's going to be a struggle. D.C. has not lost a game inside Audi Field, and I would love for the Brahmas to be the first team to give them a loss in their home field. This weekend, St. Louis is going to Audi Field. We'll do our game predictions on that later. You might have been able to glean that I think D.C. is going to beat St. Louis. I also want that because it gives the Brahmas that edge in the standings, right? So if you look back up here, if St. Louis loses this weekend, they become 3-2, and we win, it become 4-1. Boom, we're first place in the league. How about that? Jumping into the PFF scores, now that we got 4 weeks under our belt, we're going into week 5, which is halfway through the season. You got your overall rankings really starting to mean something, where they start factoring in all the different scoreable metrics for your team's offense and defense. One thing that's interesting here, you got the Stallions number 1 at an 85.1, the Battlehawks at number 2 at 76.3. The Battlehawks actually came back, and the Birmingham Stallions actually lost a little bit of the lead after this last week's game, probably because of a low-scoring game, defensive struggle there. But Brahmas there at number 3, 72.5. Check this out. Hopefully Webb and Alex are watching this. I'd love, especially for Webb, to see this. The Arlington Renegades, the 0-4 Arlington Renegades, are actually ranked higher in PFF scores than the DC Defenders, 68.2 to 68.1. Are we splitting hairs? Yeah, probably. But me personally, I like just seeing an 0-4 team over a 2-2 team. Then you got the Panthers, Showboats, and the Renegades rounding it out. A 1-3 Houston Roughnecks team But you can see ranked at 62.1, but you can see how close all those teams are. 4 through 8, 68, 68, 67, 65, 62. Those are the overall rankings. Very, very tight down there for the bottom of the league. And then you start getting a little bit of buffer there at teams 1, 2, and 3. Also looking at the defense, these are the defensive rankings. No surprise, top 3 teams also have the top 3 defenses. 89, 72, and 75 respectively for the Stallions, Battlehawks, and Brahmas. The Renegades, 58.7, and the Defenders are at 60.9. So the Defenders' defense does rank a little bit higher. Then you got a 71, 70, and 69. These are in 1 through 8 overall scores. That's why the defensive scores don't quite line up there. But DC Defenders and Arlington battling for the worst defenses in the league. I don't know, man. I like the sound of that. I do like the sound of that. All right, moving on down the line. We're going to pop up our little game graphic here. So this weekend, as we mentioned, San Antonio Branhmas going to Arlington Renegades. We actually have the power rankings messed up here a little bit. Sorry about that. But the Brahmas are currently ranked number 3 in the UFM's power ranking, and the Renegades are ranked number 8 in the UFL's power ranking. But the game is going to be this Saturday, April 27th, 6 p.m. on Fox. Let's dig into some stats, baby. We love stats, right? So this is the Brahmas versus Arlington. We'll begin our game preview here. Overall PFF score for the Brahmas, 72.5. Arlington, 68.2. Like we talked about already, ranked number 4 in the league for a team that's 0-4. One of the problems you can see why Arlington's not winning games, they've scored 75 points and given up 100 points. Doesn't take rocket science to figure out what's going on, right? The Brahmas have scored 90 and given up 71. That's why we're throwing 1. Completion percentages for the 2 quarterbacks. Luis Perez is one of the all-time greats for spring football. The Brahmas now have Quentin Dormady. These are Dormady's completion percentage numbers, not an overall completion percentage number. So for the first game he came in off the bench, he's had a 62% completion percentage, which is great, right? Even had a touchdown pass in that game. Passing yards, team versus team, 912 to 915, very comparable there. Rushing yards, the Brahmas probably need to step it up a little bit if we're going to be able to compete with the upper echelon of the league. We have 254 rushing yards total as a team. That's 3.2 yards per carry. Arlington, 295, 3.5 yards per carry. Very comparable to the Brahmas, but we want to see that go up a little bit. Get down to the defensive scores. This is probably the biggest reason why Arlington is 0-4. They probably have the worst defense in the league. Brahmas have one of the top 3 defenses in the league. Overall score of 75.6. Arlington score 58.7. You can see the difference there. A stat I kind of added in this week because I thought it was pretty interesting. You got quarterback hits. How many times a quarterback's been hit by our defense, and how many times a quarterback has been sacked by our defense. So if you look at the Brahmas, 14 hits, 18 sacks in 4 games. 32 times someone on a Brahmas team has hit the opposing team's quarterback within 4 games. You look over at the Arlington's defensive penetration, 7 hits, 9 sacks, 16 times in 4 games. You get down in the receiving percentage, Brahmas allowing 65% completion percentage, and the Arlington Renegades are allowing 61.4. So when I started looking at the quarterback hits and started looking at our O-line versus their D-line and their D-line versus our O-line, I decided to make some graphics here. So on to the graphics. Brahma's O-line versus Renegades D-line. So these are according to week 4 starters. Now, the depth charts are not out at the time of recording this for next week. I don't know what injuries there are for every team. So we went off the week 4 depth charts that were released before last week. And I didn't cherry pick the highest score player at what position. I basically went, if you started and you were left tackle, or you were one of the edge rushers, or you're a D tackle, or you were the center, this is where you're going to be. We got it kind of lined up there. So we'll start there with the Brahmas. We got Kelly, our left tackle, scored a 60.4, and the Leveo, our guard, 53.7. Tuckenberg is a 67.1. Obviously, he's Alex Mollet's backup, but he's been playing the last couple of weeks, doing a phenomenal job there. Coward is probably our best rated O-lineman on the team at 66.2, and Falaga down there at 52.3. Do those numbers sound astronomical? I don't think that they're like the highest rated per person, but a group as a whole, they've done great, right? Very little sacks, very little penetration. Those scores are probably a little low because we are struggling a little bit to run the ball. But I don't think that's because we can't run the ball. I think that's because we choose not to. We're a passing team this last weekend. You saw Lovett getting some of those tough nose, in your face, short yardage, goal line yardage, and we were able to do that, no problem. But a lot of our ratings are, we're throwing it 3-1, right? So you see who we're going up against. You got your D lineman, a couple of linebackers on the edge. You got your Vic Beasley, 65.1. Lawley is a 59.5. Stokes, 55.7. Redmond, 90.3. And Clark is 69.1. So just looking at these stats, I'm going to say a key to the game, a key to our victory, very simple, block Redmond. That's it, right? Highest rated D-line on their team, probably one of the highest rated guys in the league. Now, what about our D-line going up against their offensive line? So I want you to think back right now. All their D linemen were in the 60s, right? We got 3 D linemen scored over 85. We got Ray, Dalton, and Ward respectively. All of them in the 80s. Ward at an 89.5. If you remember, Ward is the guy Webb said that the Brahmas were desperate, so we picked him up, right? So I love being desperate. Whew, consider me desperate. 89.5. Understand, this doesn't even count actually our best outside linebacker, hybrid D lineman, Delonte Scott. He didn't start last week. He's actually rated up in the 80s as well, and I didn't want to be padding the stats, so I kept it consistent. If you started last week, that's why you're listed here. You can see Vincent and Patton scoring actually pretty low, but those are interior D linemen. We play the 3-4. Those guys' job is to eat up the double team and let Ward, Dalton, Ray, Williams, Devontae Beckett, Scott get the pressure. We're getting tons of pressure, as we saw in the earlier graphic. 30-plus hits, right, on the quarterback. Pressure's been phenomenal. You got the Arlington Renegades O-line. You got Evans at 72 out there on the left tackle. That's exactly where you want your best O-lineman. So we're going to have a great matchup there. So watch that. Left tackle versus whoever's out there on that edge. They do kind of move around. We don't always have Ray on the right or Ray on the left or Ward on the left. They move them around a lot. But watch that left tackle. See if you can keep that edge pressure from coming around and getting to the quarterback's blind side, protecting Perez there. Respectable, Minor 52, Luca 68, Samaya 57, Henderson 60.3. Very, very, very respectable PFF grades for the Arlington Roughnecks. I don't think people have said their offense is a problem. It's pretty much been their defense that's been the problem for them this year. Worst defense in the league. With that being said, we're going to get into our win-loss predictions. This is week 5. You see the bullpen predictions. I went 4-0 last week. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Hold your applause. 4-0. 4-0. My overall record for the season is 14-2. 14-2. That's pretty good. The 2 losses were the Brahmas when we lost to St. Louis, and the other loss was when St. Louis lost to Michigan week 1. Both of those, in my opinion, could have gone either way, right? They both came down to the last play of the game. So last week we went with all home teams. This week mixed up just a little bit. We got Brahmas going to Renegades. Obviously, we're in the top 2 or 3 teams in the league, going up against one of the worst teams in the league. We love throwing the ball. Arlington hates playing defense. Who knows what might happen? I'll show you my score prediction later. We got Stallions going to Houston. Sorry, Houston. I don't think you have a chance, right? I know you got Mark Thompson back, and I know you got Reed Sennett there, and I know your defense is pretty good, but let's be honest, right? You're just getting on a roll, and you're pretty much about to run into a freight train. You got Battlehawks going to the DC Defenders. I would love for DC to win this game, as we talked about. and for the Brahmas to win this weekend. I would basically put the Brahmas alone in first place, put St. Louis and DC tied to second place, and really make for a unique matchup when the Brahmas go to DC in 2 weeks. So just out of sheer desire for a matchup and drama in the league, I'm going to pull for the DC Defenders to beat the Battlehawks this week, and I want the Brahmas to get that first win inside Audi Field. Then last game, I think AC coined this last week. The phrase the mid bowl, the battle of the mids, when it was Houston and Arlington going up against each other. Well, this week's mid game is the Panthers going up against the Showboats. Perry got hurt playing against the Brahmas last week. Will he start? Will he not? Case Cookus got hurt last week. Will he start? Will he not? Is this going to be the battle of the backups? Who knows? I doubt every team's got a backup as solid as our backup in Dormady. Realistically, if you said all the starters for every team at the beginning of the season was quarterbacks 1 through 8, Dormady would be number 9, right? That would be my opinion. But I do think the Showboats are going to get it done. They're going to be at home. And for my boy Brandon, the AKA the captain over there, for his sanity, we really need Memphis to get this L. But now on to my score prediction. Score prediction for the San Antonio game. The Brahmas 24, Arlington 19. I like that 19 score. Last week I predicted a 20-point score. We gave up 9 points. Arlington's not scoring very much more than 19 points a game. I don't think the Brahmas are going to just go in there and demolish them. I think it'll be a competitive game. All these games have been competitive, aside for the one game that Birmingham had where they blew them. Who did they blow out? Oh, yeah, that's right, the Showboats. Yeah, I think the game's going to be very competitive. Looking forward to Week 5. As always, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. On behalf of the United Football Media Group, down here in the bullpen, the cow pasture, we just want to say, let's get some butts in seats, folks. Let's go to games. And as always, we're going to end this on a high note. Horns forward, baby. Let's go, Brahmas.